I would like to introduce to you all Miss Emily C. from Spirit of the Universe. Her sobriety date is July 14th, 2022. All right, asking you to unmute, Emily. The floor is yours.
Thank you, my dear sister. Love you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Emily. I'm a grateful alcoholic. Thank you so much for inviting me here to share my story with you guys. I pray before every time I share that I say something that is helpful to someone, not hurtful, and that my words come out clear because my story is pretty, so sometimes I can be pretty everywhere. So we'll see how well this goes. It'll be fine. Again, thank you guys for having me here. Emily, grateful alcoholic, sobriety date July 14th, 2022. Only by the grace of God and the miracles that he performs do I sit here today. I do want to say that my alcoholism took me far past the bar and into the streets of a pretty nasty drug addiction, but I do my best to not, get graphic about it, but just to let you know what the progression was like for me. Born and raised in Florida, grew up in a very alcoholic home. My father was a very high functioning alcoholic, but still an alcoholic. And so we lived with that. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, the codependent to the alcoholic. So from a very young age, the tension was there in the house always. And as a little kid, I didn't know what it was, but you could feel it. A lot of arguing, a lot of chaos in the house, but my mom did a really good job of protecting my brother and I have a brother who's 16 months younger than me. And so it's just him and I as far as kids. So she did a really good job of sheltering us from the reality of what was going on. All I knew is that I would take my dad's empty beer cans to the garbage and throw them out to replace them on weekends when he was watching football and stuff. I didn't know the extent of his drinking. We moved around a lot when I was little, up until 5th grade. I can't count how many times we moved. So I was very insecure, not really feeling a part of, not really, I didn't feel good about me. I felt like for such a young age, I had to move so much. I had to be somebody different every time I moved in order to fit in. At least that's how I felt. So I guess I would call myself a chameleon from a very young age, just kind of morphing into the way the atmosphere and the people were, I can't think of the word. Just kind of turning into whatever the situation was, the happy kid, the mean kid, whatever I needed to be to fit in. So that was, I was very self-conscious. I was, didn't really care for myself too much, but I think it was just a kid thing back then. 1988, I was in 5th grade and we finally moved to where we stayed in Tarpon Springs, Florida. So that kind of gave me a grounding. And over the first couple of years of being here, I really got a footing, got some really good friends, and felt finally like I, belonged here, I guess. But as, the years went by, the chaos in the house got worse. It was, and now I'm older, so I kind of have an idea of what's going on, but still not fully. Really good kid in school. I would say I was a loving, happy kid. You wouldn't know the toxic that was at home, seeing me outside of home. And I get into high school and I'm still a really good kid, goes to school all the time. I never skipped school. I actually skipped school one time in my life. And it was the one day my mom called the school just to leave a message for me and I got caught. And so I never did it again like that. I always thought that was strange because I was, pretty sneaky. So in high school, I would do like the weekend keg parties, all just, casual. There was just really just having fun. There was, if I think back, like in my head and thoughts, like there was real no need to, I didn't have the need to go drink all the time. At least I don't feel like I did, but maybe I did. But I do remember like the first time I ever got drunk, it was off peach schnapps and I was 12 years old and we found it in my friend's parents' cabinet and ooh, what a horrible, but I remember feeling so good at the same time. like you feel physically yucky from the alcohol in you, but I felt so happy and full on the inside. So it was like one of those mixed feelings. And again, I was 12, so I didn't have full access to it. So I just kind of waited, I guess, until I went into high school. And by the end of high school, I was pretty much drinking at keg parties in the woods every weekend. It was a Friday night thing to do after the football game. And then after we graduated high school, I did go to college, but that left like so much time to drink and do what I wanted. I had all kinds of free time, you know. So that's what I did. I pretty much drank, went to school, worked a part-time job. But if I've sat in my life and focused on what like was important to me at the time, it was partying. It was always partying. It was always what fun can we have? What can we do? And how intoxicated can we get? I remember always, you know, we buy a 6-pack or something, and well, let's get 12 because I never wanted to run out. I couldn't run out, and I would go through them so fast. Even at 17 and 18 years old, I needed, as a 100-pound little girl, a 12-pack. And I remember the guys, oh my gosh, you can drink us under the table. And that was cool for me. That made me cool. So let's do it. All right, let's bring shots in. It was the life of the party, but real dark in here. Wasn't, I appeared very happy, but wasn't on the inside feeling very happy. This went on for a while. I will go back a little bit about my dad. My entire life, I wanted my dad's acceptance and his, I guess his acceptance and just to be proud of anything that I had done. And my dad was the type of person, the way he would encourage you was to put you down. So I never really had a good relationship with him. If anything, I was begging for his acceptance. And with that, through my whole life, and then now I'm coming into like adulthood and going out into the world, I still craved that fatherly acceptance and turned that into looking for the man who was going to be that for me. So I became very promiscuous on top of alcoholic. So I spent like early 20s. I did land a really good job. I was working full time at a great company, Raymond James, actually. I didn't even know what I had back then. I was just so partying. That's all I did. I worked 9 to 5. I'd get off work, go straight to the bar for happy hour and drink until they closed the bar, wake up and repeat. And then the weekends were full of the same thing, just usually on a boat or at the beach instead. And I saw absolutely nothing wrong with this. This is just what I did. And I paid my bills and I worked. So what was the problem with it? But when I went to bed at night, the nights I could remember going to bed, I can remember just feeling really sad and just really waiting for something to happen, waiting for the happiness to hit, waiting for the world to start or my life to start. And I wasn't realizing the whole time that this was my life that I had created, and nothing was going to come save me and pop out of a box somewhere and say, okay, now your life's great and you can start doing it this way. And I don't know what I was thinking. I was very naive to the thought that I actually was responsible for my own life. So I just continued doing what I did. And I met a guy working there. I was 22 and he was 36. Very good looking guy. He, you know, had his own place and really nice and just charismatic, just the perfect guy for me. And he's older, right? So he's got that father figure thing and he's established, he's on his own and, you know, he can take care of me, which I think is what I was really looking for. But with him came a wife and a child, but he was getting divorced. And I didn't see any problem with the fact that I literally just wrecked a home. I thought that I had won, and like just the sick thinking that my thought process was off, was sick. And I moved in with this guy and I wasn't there a few hours to find out that he wasn't who he presented himself to be. And he was actually a very evil, abusive man who now had me in his clutches, and I was pretty much held hostage there. Like it was my home, but it was a horrible situation. It was 3 months of the most horrific abuse and just chaos. Just you think of it, and he wound up being a part of some crazy organization and all the secret back stuff and just insanity. And without all the horrible details, I wound up 3 months after being locked into the house, escaping through a broken window and running him over with my car to get away. And that that was, I didn't realize at the time how traumatic that was. I never went to counseling. I never did anything. I just numbed it with what I knew best and just drank more and more and more and more. And that I did from, it was a vicious cycle of go to work, get off, drink. And at this point now I've introduced a little bit of an upper so I could drive home from the bar without wrecking the car. But then I needed a downer to go to sleep once I got home. So now I've got some little other things going in there with the alcohol. And from age 22 to 26, that's pretty much was my life. I drank, worked, slept with who I wanted to sleep with, went where I wanted to go. I was very financially set. Like I would travel to Key West by myself for a week to party. I did what I wanted when I wanted, but I was so miserable on the inside. Like it looked like I had this amazing life. I owned a home, I owned a boat. I mean, I had this great little beautiful life to people looking in, but there was nothing great and beautiful about it. It was all a shell. It was all fake, really. You know, the smile you'd see on my face could light up a room, but the darkness in here could darken anything, but nobody could see that. I wouldn't let anybody see that. And at age 27, I took a trip to Key West for spring break. And I had been talking to a guy that lived down there. I wouldn't consider it dating, maybe, I don't know, long distance dating or whatever, but somebody that I would go down there and hang out with when I'd go. And I guess we went to weddings and stuff together. So maybe it was long distance dating. I don't know. I was so selfish and self-centered. I didn't really think about anybody else and what their position in my life was. I was just there, the bulldozing through life. I came back from the trip to Key West, and a few months later, I found out that I was pregnant. And to hear the news that I was pregnant, I was in the bathroom at work with one of my coworkers, and I was terrified, mildly devastated, and a shred of happiness. Not very much happiness, because now I had to be responsible. Now my life was going to completely change, and I couldn't be that selfish mess anymore. Like I have this little person I have to take care of. And again, I was 26. I didn't have a steady boyfriend. This was not a plan. I don't know that I ever even planned to have kids ever. So this was a disruption, I would say, I guess. And I'm just being honest about the way I felt at the time. Now my daughter's 19 and the love of my life. But at the time it was pretty shocking for me. So I freaked out. There was not in my head that there wasn't an option. Like I was having this baby, some people toy with other options, but I wasn't. And the main reason why there wasn't an option was because I was 26. I was fully responsible for myself. And at 17, I did have an abortion, because I went to Key West on spring break and got pregnant then too. Wow. I never put those pieces, but yeah. Okay. So, and that was, I found out 3 days before I was graduating high school, and that was more my mom said, this is what we're doing, and you don't have a choice. And that was pretty devastating for me. So when this happened at 26, there were no options. I was definitely going to have this little one. So I went to the doctor and explained what I had been doing, and, that I was scared that, this, and this, and abundance of it could harm the child. Is everything going to be okay? And sure it was. Those 9 months, I put down cigarettes, alcohol, and every other substance that I had put in my body or continuously put in my body. For 9 months, I put it down. I didn't crave it. I didn't think about it. I didn't want it. Something in me like switched to responsible. Like you have this little human growing in you, and she didn't ask to come into this world. So please don't poison her before she gets here, kind of thing. And it was the best 9 months of my life. Like I had never felt so healthy. And I mean, at the end, it was rough. I was huge, but I felt healthy and clear-headed, and I was sober for the first time in a decade, at least. And I remember loving the way it felt. So December 26th, 2 days after Christmas, 54 hours of labor and an emergency C-section later, I welcomed my little angel into this world. And she was perfect. She was beautiful. And it was everything you could imagine, except for me. Now I have this ball of responsibility, and I wasn't even quite capable of taking care of myself very well. But now I have this little girl. So I moved out of the home I lived in. I moved in with my parents so that my mom could save the day like she always did. And that surgery started me on a medication that opiates, I'll just say it because it's not a secret, and entered a different world of addiction. Now I still drank, but the opiates were just a whole different game. They gave you this feeling. I had postpartum depression that was horrible. Plus the pain, and it was like this was a miracle pill for me, and it fixed everything, just like the alcohol had fixed everything. So now I'm have Madison, and I'm living at my parents' house. For the first 5 years of her life, I was home. I was with her. I worked a little bit, but not a lot. But my mom primarily shadowed everything that was done. Like I never felt like a full parent, I guess. Like I always had my mom there. And as these 5 years go by, I'm going from what I was prescribed to stuff I'm finding on the street. And now I'm like a full blown gone. Like I'm stealing from my parents. It was just not pretty. The alcoholism addiction was definitely progressing, and it was going very fast. At age 33, my dad found out I had stole his credit card, and he had me arrested. And that's the first time I'd ever been arrested. I never considered myself even breaking the law. Although like I did it every day driving drunk. Like I just didn't see myself as that. I wasn't a lawbreaker. I wasn't a criminal. However, the cops saw different, and they took me to jail. And that arrest started an open case with the DCF, to where the CPI caseworker, when I went to jail that day, I was totally freaked out and intoxicated, out of control. And I thought that if I told these officers that I would kill myself, that they just wouldn't arrest me. Well, that's not what happens. They still take you to jail, and they put you in a freezing butt naked cell. Oh, it's so cold in there, and they just leave you there. And with a little paper robe. So I felt so low, and I mean, I felt like trash. Like I'm here right now, I'm in jail, and I'm naked in this gown, and I'm here for stealing from my family. It was horrible. It was horrible. And it only gave me a very brief stop in my tracks to kind of like rewind what I had done for the last however many years. And it let me play in my head in those few days that I sat in jail, going through all the things that had landed me there. I think that's really the first time that I realized that I had a problem. And most people would have looked at me years before and told me that I had one, but that I realized, because now it's like my consequences are showing up to my actions, and that hadn't happened before. I got away with everything. So the CPI removed me from the home. I was no longer allowed to live at my parents' house. I was not allowed to live under the same roof as my daughter. Devastating. That was devastating for me. I was already on the fence of what a good parent I was or what not good parent I was. And then now I can't even be a parent. But reality was, who was I kidding? I had no business being around my daughter half the time. And I just really didn't. I don't know whatever. I don't anyway. So fast forward to that, I get through. No, I'm gonna stop because that's not fast forward. Right after that happened, I decided that, well, the court decided that I was gonna go to rehab. And I was put in a rehab in a not so nice area of town, but that's I guess how it works, just where the rehabs are. And I lasted there for 3 months, and I was thrown out. This rehab was the first time that I was introduced to 12-step programs. I didn't even know they existed. I think there were jokes about my dad needed to go to AA at some point in my life, but didn't know what it was. And when I went to the 12-step, I think it was NA back then that I went to, I was very interested in how it worked, but I was not interested in doing the work, which is why it took me 3 months to get thrown out of the rehab. That led me to going across the state because people, places, and things, right? So if I remove myself from here, I'll get better. But the problem with that was I took myself with me. And that's, I realize now that I was the problem. Like it was this that was sick. It wasn't the bar that I went to or the street I drove down. It was this and my thoughts and my mind. So basically from then, and for the vicious cycle of in and out of rehab and in and out of detox, homelessness, it was wild. I landed myself homeless in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'd never been homeless before. My family was upper middle class. We lived in a very nice area, big house, all this, you know, just you would think it was the best place ever. And I guess it was for someone who didn't have the mind that I had, because I was just not happy anywhere. And now I'm living on the streets in St. Pete. And I meet this person down there, this guy Ray, who basically he turned out to be my boyfriend, but he was also like the protector. He knew the streets. He was the cream of the crop, fresh out of prison, you know, selling drugs, exactly the type of guy that I looked for. But he did kind of take me in under his wing. And he became my best friend, my soulmate, my go-to for absolutely everything, good, bad, and indifferent. He'd save me from the worst spots, and he would bring me the worst stuff if I needed it. So it was one of those toxic enabling friendships, but he was always there if I needed him. And at one point, we were so toxic for each other, the courts decided to put a no contact on us, so we couldn't see each other. And then they put me into another rehab, and this rehab probably was the one that really kind of opened my eyes, because it was 6 months inpatient, and it was a Department of Corrections rehab, which is basically like a rehab. You're in jail rehab. You can't go anywhere. You're watched by really like a hawk. And I really jumped into the program and jumped into the things that I needed to do in the rehab. Like I could rehab on my head. Like I became the rehab princess, I guess, detox princess. I could walk through a rehab and a detox and do it, fake it until I got out on the other side every single time. This one, I think was the one I got the most from. I still didn't stay sober leaving, but what I did leave with was a whole new boyfriend. And it's a suggestion I don't give to anyone. Don't find your significant other in a rehab. Not the best place. But anyway, so that started the next 7 years of my life, going off and on with the toxicity of that relationship. And I'm bringing the relationships up because for me, my relationships were defining. They defined me. I had to be in one. I had to have somebody, because I wasn't okay by myself. I wasn't okay with these people either, but it was, as long as somebody else was there to share in the misery or to partake in the chaos, like I felt better about things. But I have Ray, who's my best friend, and Jared, who's my boyfriend. And it's like this, it was just crazy intoxication all the time, always wondering when and how I'm going to get the next fix. If I'm going to be able to get to the bar before its last call, am I going to be able to buy the alcohol before they stop selling it tonight? Am I going to be able to get the fix from the dope man down the road? I mean, this was all my mind thought about all the time. It was just, it was horrific. And I was just a shell of a human being. I was not, it was bad. And I got to a point where my family basically said, we're out of hope for you. Like, we love you. We'll do what we can for you when we can. But I don't want to say I got cut off by them, but they weren't open arms as much as they used to be when I would come home for my 3 days of sobriety or whatever. Detachments, bridges were getting burned all around me. And I could see them coming. I could feel them coming. But the most important thing in my world was my next intoxication. That is before my child, before my mother, before anything. That was my next intoxication, was all I thought about. I lost countless jobs, thrown out of countless sober living homes or regular homes. I was the nicest, scandalous person you'd ever meet, because you would never think I was about to take your wallet out of your purse and take off when you met me. You would have thought I was this cream of the crop, sweet person. I became just a person I wouldn't want to be around, a person I didn't want to be around, which is why I ingested and did everything I did, because I wasn't really there. After years and years of homelessness between 2 different cities down here in Florida, not the best cities, I guess. And I wound up a little bit north of St. Pete, and I was homeless in a whole new area. And I ended up dating this, I say dating and I laugh because we lived in a homeless shelter and we dated, and our dates were literally walking from the homeless shelter to the liquor store. I mean, that's just pathetic. I can't even say dating. We walked to the liquor store together every day. That's what we did. And one night he got furious with me over something and he tried to kill me. He choked me. He sexually assaulted me behind a laundromat. And the only reason I sit here today from that is because a woman heard it and she called 911, and the cops were able to take him down and remove me from the scene. And he wound up in prison. But it was like that first traumatic experience. And now there's years later, almost a decade later, another one, none of which I ever got any kind of help for. I dove right back into my alcohol use and addiction further. And I did the same with this. Thankfully, that was 2020. So I only had 2.5 more years of the chaos. I didn't know it, but, and that last year and a half was probably the worst. I overdosed at least 31 times that I can remember. Hospitalized countless times. Found on the side of the road as a Jane Doe twice. Knocking down the bathrooms, the doors in the bathrooms of 7-Eleven, Walmart, Wawa, you name it. I was in there, but overdosing. And I mean, it was terrifying, but it was my life. It's what I did. And I was so sick and tired of it. I was so tired of it. But I was so fearful of what was on the other side of it. And you would think I would be fearful of what I was living in and the things I was doing and using and the situations and the people I would be around. You would think that that would be the fearful and the terrifying part, but that was my lifestyle. That's what I did. What was terrifying was sobriety and success and actually getting sober. And what does that look like? Because I had no idea. So in July of 2022, Jared and I, what that was either, but Jared and I were living at my mom's house. I went to pick him up from work and got home, and he went into the bathroom to take a shower and overdosed in the bathroom. And my daughter is the one who walked in and found him. We were all outside anyway. So that was the 13th of July. And seeing that happen and seeing my daughter really is what it was. Watching the horror on her face and just all of watching everything that she went through that night. Watching how horrific it is when you see somebody overdose and unresponsive and turning gray on the floor. And just watching her and seeing how she reacted, that was it for me. And it wasn't me that she was watching, but just seeing her fear about him. That was really the first time that I even took into account what I had put any of my family members through, any of them. And watching her face, look at him in such terror, like, I did that to my little girl so many times. She just wasn't there to see it. So in that moment, I was done. I was never going to put that shit up again. Could not do that to my child. I don't know why it took 18, 17 years. She was 16 when I got sober. It just took seeing it, I guess, and I put it down. And so I consider the 14th my sobriety date. A month from the 14th, Ray died of an overdose. When I tell you he was my world, he was everything to me. Everything would be okay as long as Ray was there. And that reality isn't real. Like I know that. I know that. I obviously am here sober and okay, and he's not here, but I didn't believe that. I really thought that like I could not survive without this man. And he wasn't in my life daily, but he was a phone call away all the time. So when he died from the same substance I used every day before that, like that just redefined I was on the right track, getting away from it, not partaking in it anymore. And that was August. Sorry. That was August 14th when he passed away. And so I spent the next 5 months as a dry drunk. I still wasn't quite ready to put the work in, but I wasn't willing to pick up a drink or a drug either. And that was just sheer hell. My experience is that being a dry drunk is far worse than being a drunk up here. Because if you're drunk, you at least have your answer to what's going on up here. When you're a dry drunk, you have no solution to the crazy and the horrible thoughts that go on in here. You're just stuck with them and you don't have a program. I mean, I was just literally stuck in it's like a purgatory. Just, it was horrible. And in January of 23, another one of Jared and I's lovely fights, he was heavily, actively still using, and I was playing the let me save him role. So I would, literally chasing him around the city, trying to get him to stop, not, but that was chaos. And this night I was doing the same thing, and I went down to him, and we're standing in the middle of the street, and he's screaming all of his horrible, hateful things at me. And I'm trying to get him to see, have you ever tried to reason with an active alcoholic or addict? It's just not possible. And I know this, but I still was trying. And as he's screaming these horrible things to me, out of nowhere just came this, like, a calm. Like, I don't even know how to, it was just like a calm. And it got like real quiet in here. Like the noise was all out here, but in here. And I felt this amazing warm hug, or like a blanket of warmth. And this voice saying, you don't have to do this anymore. You don't have to do this anymore. And it kept like saying it louder, and like, you don't have to, like, getting more. And I got in my car, and I just told him, I said, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't. And I got in my car, and for the first time, I actually left his house and left. I didn't circle the block. I didn't go down the road and call him to ensue it more. Like, I got in the car. As I was driving out of the neighborhood, that same voice said, go to AA 3 times, as clear as if the person was in the back seat. So I called my dad, my alcoholic dad, who'd never been to an AA meeting in his life. And I told him what just happened, and I told him what I was feeling. And he said, all right, you idiot, go to AA then. Like, listen to it, go. And I did. And I went that night to a clubhouse, whatever, down the road from where I was living at my mom's at the time. And I got out of the car, and I was shaken. I looked crazy. I can only imagine. And I get out of the car, and there's a woman sitting out front. And she's like, oh, are you new? And she starts talking to me. This woman was like the angel that needed to be sitting there. It was the most perfect timing. She had just 3 months earlier gone through the same thing with her significant other, and was just coming back into recovery. And it was like, she's come inside, sit with me. It was the most beautiful, chaotic insanity. I don't know how else to explain it, but such a crazy, beautiful moment, to go from the chaos in the street and the screaming and the sad and the mad, to into this room of love and hope. And I sat down, and we said the serenity prayer, and for the first time in my life, it landed. I heard the words. And that started my program. That I got into that, and I dove in. When I tell you I dove in, like, I was on fire like you would not believe. I was begging to do the steps. I grabbed a sponsor. We met twice a week. I mean, I dove, and I was in it, and I was doing it. And then I wasn't. And then I thought, like, I was in the middle of my 4th step. So I was like, I just need to take a little bit longer on this 4th step. Don't take longer on it. And in the middle of that, right in the middle of my 4th step, I switched sponsors, which was a strange time, but what a life-saving time it was, because my sponsor today has carried me, walked with me through this program that has saved my life. I believe I did 1, 2, well, at least did 1 and 2 that night at the first night I went to the meeting. I remember doing step 3 with both of my sponsors, and both very powerful. And then to do the action steps to get into step 4 in the inventory, and to really take a look at me and my thoughts and my beliefs and my values, if I had any, and really just kind of look at who Emily was at age 46. Who is she? I had no idea. Like, I was a little kid, still am, learning life, like really solidly learning life. But I was so excited to do it. Once I halted in the middle of my 4th step, I jumped back in, and I went through the steps, and I met, and I still do meet with my sponsor once a week, sometimes more, and very involved in my program. In January, though, I did get, again, I'd gotten through the steps, and I'm coming up, it was a year and a half at that time. And I kind of got the ego rose again a little bit, and was like, you don't have to go to as many meetings, you could do this, you could do that. So I tried that. That didn't work either. And, I didn't have a thought of a drink or of anything like that, but I was very discontent, very aggravated. So coming back to the program and getting back involved in, not coming back, I never left, I shouldn't say it like that, but going back on my schedule of regular meetings and all that, it was the answer. It's the solution. Always has been the solution, and it's been right under our noses for so long. And I'm just so grateful to have been introduced to it, found it, and have worked this program. If you're new, please stay. And it's a lot of work and it can seem overwhelming. But I can tell you, for somebody who was introduced to the program at 33 and didn't really grab it until she was 44, I wish I had grabbed it at 33. But grateful for the experiences I had until now, because I definitely feel what I've been through. I will say this, I forgot about this. The program that I was court ordered to when I first got arrested the very first time, and I've been arrested 14 times and have plenty of felonies under mine. So that wasn't the end of it, but was just the beginning. But that program that I was court ordered to has hired me to be a peer recovery support specialist starting in October, as soon as my last felony falls off. But I mean, I turned my whole life around. Like, my pain turned into my purpose, and I can go and work with do the same thing that those people did for me, and hopefully save some lives. And if not save some lives, at least get some clarity in some heads, because I know what it was like being in those rehabs, and I just want to be there for the next person coming in the door to help them. Just let them know that there is a solution in AA. It's these 12 steps. It's your higher power. It is a beautiful way to live. And I don't think it would be a bad idea for everyone on this planet to work these 12 steps. Everybody's got something. Thank you guys so much for letting me come and share my experience, strength, and hope with you. I love you all so much. Thank you.